It started as nothing. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I had always trusted Serena. We had been together for years, built a life on love and loyalty. But lately, things felt off. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. It was in the small things, tiny, nearly imperceptible shifts that shouldn't have meant anything, but somehow, they did. She started keeping her phone face down. She'd get up in the middle of dinner to take calls in the other room. She started working late, even though she used to complain about overtime. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. But I told myself not to be that guy. The paranoid, insecure husband. The one who sees ghosts in the shadows. And then, one night, her phone buzzed. She was in the shower, and I was lying in bed, half watching TV when the screen lit up beside me. I glanced at it out of habit, expecting it to be some work notification or a message from her friend. But it wasn't. Unknown number. Last night was unforgettable. When can I see you again? I sat up so fast I nearly knocked over the glass of water on my nightstand. My fingers tightened around the phone. I read the message again and again. My mind raced through every possible explanation. A wrong number? A joke? A misunderstanding? My pulse hammered in my ears. The water stopped running. A few seconds later, Serena walked into the room, wrapped in a towel, her damp hair clinging to her shoulders. She was humming softly, rubbing a towel against her neck, until she saw my face. She stopped. Her eyes flicked to the phone in my hand. "Lucas?" Her voice was careful. "What's wrong?" I turned the screen toward her. "Who is this?" For a second, just a second, something flickered across her face. A hesitation, a calculation. Then, she exhaled through her nose and shook her head, almost amused. "You went through my phone?" she asked, her lips curving slightly, like I was a child caught doing something ridiculous. I ignored the deflection. "Who is this?" She walked over and plucked the phone from my hand. A quick glance at the message, then she tossed the phone onto the bed. "It's spam." I let out a sharp breath. "Spam?" "Yeah, you know, those bots that send fake messages? They try to scam people into clicking links." "It's nothing, Lucas." She was too smooth, too composed. "You're telling me this is a bot? A bot that talks about last night being unforgettable?" Serena rolled her eyes. "God, you're being dramatic." I stared at her. My wife, the woman I knew better than anyone, was lying to me. I could feel it. The way she controlled her breathing. The way she didn't ask me what the message said. She already knew. "You've been different," I said quietly. "You stay late at work. You hide your phone. You're distant. And now this." She sighed, stepping closer, her fingers grazing my wrist. "Baby," she murmured, "you always do this when you're stressed. You start overthinking everything." I flinched. There it was. The twist. The flip. "You think I'm imagining this?" My voice was tight. "I think you're tired," she said gently. "And maybe you should talk to Dr. Whitaker again." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Dr. Whitaker was my therapist. I had seen him a year ago, after a particularly rough period at work. Serena had supported me through it, helped me get the help I needed. Now, she was using it against me. She smiled softly, squeezing my fingers. "Lucas, love, sometimes your mind plays tricks on you." The words sank into my chest like lead. My father had lost his grip on reality years ago. Dementia, they had called it. But it had started with doubt, confusion, questioning things that were real. What if it was happening to me too? No, I wasn't my father. I wasn't losing my mind. Was I? The next day, I met Naomi for coffee. She noticed immediately. "Jesus," she said, setting down her cup. "What happened to you?" I sighed, rubbing my face. "Serena got a message last night. From someone saying they had an unforgettable night." Naomi's eyes darkened. "And?" She said it was spam. Naomi scoffed. "You believe that?" I hesitated. "I don't know." She made it sound logical. Naomi leaned forward. "Lucas, listen to me. You know when something's wrong. You feel it in your gut. And I think you already know what's happening." I looked away, swallowing hard. "I need proof." Naomi nodded. "Then get it. Because if you wait for her to confess, You'll be waiting forever. For the next few days, I watched. I paid attention. Serena was careful, smart, but little things stood out. She never left her phone unattended anymore. When she texted, she would angle the screen away from me. When she came home late, she smelled like something else. A faint, expensive cologne that wasn't mine. One night, I stayed awake, waiting for her. She came in at 1 a.m., slipping into bed like nothing was wrong. I reached for her, wrapped an arm around her waist. She tensed. "Not tonight," she murmured, shifting away. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. My heart pounded in my ears. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't my imagination. Something was wrong, and I was going to find out what. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to wake up, shake off this paranoia, kiss Serena on the forehead, and laugh at myself for ever doubting her. I wanted to go back to how things used to be, before my mind started dissecting every glance, every late-night excuse, every time she turned her phone away just a little too quickly. But I couldn't unsee what I saw. I couldn't unfeel the way my stomach twisted when I looked at that hotel confirmation in her email. And now, I was sitting in my car across the street from that same hotel, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. That morning, when she left for work, I told her I had a meeting downtown. It was a lie. I watched from my car as she arrived at the hotel, watched her step inside like it was just another normal day. My chest felt tight. My brain kept throwing up excuses, desperate for something, anything, to make this make sense. Maybe she was meeting a friend. Maybe she had a work conference at the hotel. Maybe. Then I saw him, tall, confident, hands in his pockets like he owned the place. He walked through the entrance a few minutes after Serena. He knew where he was going. I didn't see his face, but I didn't need to. My stomach dropped. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. I went home before she did. I didn't want her to know I had been there. Not yet. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, my thoughts looping in a vicious cycle. She had walked into that hotel without hesitation. No guilt. No nervous glances over her shoulder. How long had this been going on? Was I just an idiot who hadn't noticed? The front door opened, snapping me out of my thoughts. Serena stepped inside, kicking off her heels with a sigh. She looked normal, not like someone who had just spent the afternoon with another man. "Hey, babe," she said, walking into the kitchen. "How was your meeting?" I forced myself to breathe. "Fine." She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, looking at me with those same soft eyes, the same familiar warmth. It made me sick. I swallowed hard. "What about you? Work okay?" She nodded. Long day. A beat of silence. I wanted to say something, to scream, to accuse, to demand answers. Instead, I stood up. "I need some air." I walked past her, my pulse roaring in my ears. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. I thought about all the nights I had reached for her, only for her to pull away. I thought about the way she had started wearing perfume to work, perfume I hadn't bought her. I thought about the way she had smiled at him. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. But I needed more. I needed to hear it. So, the next morning, after she left for work, I did something I never thought I would do. I bought a small voice recorder, and I hid it in our bedroom. That night, I waited. I forced myself to act normal. Serena came home late again. I asked about her day. She kissed me like everything was fine, like she loved me. I wanted to believe it. I almost did. But then I remembered the hotel, the man, the lies. I clenched my jaw, swallowing back the anger, and told myself to wait, to be patient, because tomorrow I'd have my answer. The next morning, after she left, I retrieved the recorder with shaking hands. I pressed play. Static at first, then her voice, and then his. Laughter, soft murmurs, the rustling of sheets. I felt sick. Then, clear as day, her voice. "He suspects something." My breath caught. "It doesn't matter," he said, voice smooth, easy. "He won't do anything." I gripped the recorder so hard my knuckles turned white. And for the first time since this started, I felt something stronger than heartbreak. I felt rage. I sat there, frozen, staring at the recorder like it might disappear if I looked away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, smash something, hurt something. Instead, I played it again. He suspects something. It doesn't matter. He won't do anything. The casual way he said it. The confidence. The certainty. I felt my nails dig into my palms. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment. This was a betrayal so deep, so calculated, that she and he didn't even fear consequences. They thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back. I inhaled sharply, forcing myself to think. My hands were shaking, but my mind was suddenly clear. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I wouldn't yell. Wouldn't accuse. Not until I had everything. I had the first piece of the puzzle. Now, I needed the rest. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady now as I typed. A contact. A private investigator. Because if Serena thought I wouldn't do anything, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, replaying the recording over and over, their words gnawing at my brain. The way he spoke, "He won't do anything," made my blood boil. He sounded so sure. So sure I'd sit back and take it. So sure I was weak. I wasn't weak. I had already taken the first step. At 3 a.m., I sent the message. The private investigator's number flashed on my screen, a lifeline in the chaos that was now my life. Me. I need proof. Contact. We'll find it. Let's meet tomorrow. The next morning, Serena woke up like nothing had changed. She stretched, sighed contently, and rolled toward me. "Morning, babe," she mumbled, her voice still thick with sleep. I forced myself to smile. "Morning." She kissed my cheek, soft and slow, as if she hadn't been in another man's bed 2 nights ago. "Want me to make breakfast?" she asked, already climbing out of bed. I shook my head. "No, I have an early call. I'll just grab coffee." A lie. She nodded, pulling on her robe, tying it loosely around her waist. "I might be home late again," she said casually, not even bothering to make up an excuse. I forced myself to look unaffected. "Work?" She hesitated. Just for a second. "Yeah." I nodded. "Okay." She smiled. "You're the best." I almost laughed. Instead, I kissed her on the forehead. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. I met the investigator, Grant Holloway, at a quiet diner on the edge of town. He was older, mid-50s, with tired eyes that had seen too much. The kind of man who had dug up more secrets than he cared to remember. "You want this quiet?" he asked after I told him everything. I nodded. "I don't want her to know I'm onto her." "Not yet." Grant leaned back, folding his arms. "Good call. You need undeniable proof. Not just whispers. Not just suspicion. Proof." I swallowed. "How do we get it?" "You let me do my job," he said simply. "I'll follow her. Find out who he is, where they meet, and when we have enough." He paused, studying me. "Then you decide what you want to do with it." I exhaled slowly. "How long will it take?" Grant shrugged. "Depends on how careful she is. But she's comfortable. That's good for us. People get sloppy when they think they've won. She thought she had won. She thought she was safe." I clenched my fists under the table. "Do it." That night, I pretended again. Serena walked through the door late, later than usual. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her makeup still perfect, but I noticed a faint smudge of lipstick near the corner of her mouth. She didn't even check the mirror when she walked in. I used to think that meant she was comfortable with me. Now, I knew it meant she had already checked somewhere else. "Hey, love," she said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "Sorry I'm late. Got stuck in meetings." "Meetings?" I nodded, swallowing down the bile rising in my throat. "Busy day?" She sighed, leaning against the counter. "Exhausting. Just want to shower and collapse into bed." "I bet." She walked toward the bathroom, unbuttoning her blouse as she went. I stared after her, my mind screaming at me to say something, to ask where she really was, to tell her I knew. But I didn't. I was playing the long game. The next afternoon, Grant called. "Got something for you," he said. I gripped the phone tighter. "What is it?" "You free tonight?" Meet me at my office. My stomach twisted. I'll be there. Grant's office was a small, unremarkable place above a tailor shop. No sign on the door, no receptionist, just him and a battered desk covered in folders and coffee stains. He gestured for me to sit, then slid a small manila folder across the desk. I hesitated before opening it, and then I saw him. A series of photos, grainy but clear enough. Serena, with a man, laughing, walking hand in hand into a hotel, standing too close in a parking lot, her head tilted up toward him, lips parted in a way that made me feel sick. My breath came shallow and uneven. You know him? Grant asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Grant exhaled through his nose. Name's Damon Pierce. Works in finance. Married. Married. My pulse pounded in my ears. I closed the folder, pressing my hands against it like I could crush it into dust. This enough for you? Grant asked. No, not yet. I needed more. When's the next time she's meeting him? Grant leaned back. Tomorrow night. Same hotel. I nodded slowly. Then I want to see it for myself. Grant studied me carefully. You sure about that? I wasn't sure about anything, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to feel it. Then, and only then, would I decide what came next. The next night, I sat in my car outside the hotel, the weight of my decision pressing on my chest like a cinder block. Grant had given me a time. 9:30 p.m. I watched from a distance, heart pounding, hands clenched around the steering wheel. And then she appeared. Serena, in a sleek black dress I hadn't seen before. Her hair done in soft curls, lips painted in a shade of red she never wore for me. She walked into the hotel, moving with ease, like she had done it 1,000 times before. 2 minutes later, he followed. Damon Pierce. Tall, confident, smirking as he walked in, his eyes scanning the lobby like he already owned the place. I felt something inside me snap. This was it. This was my proof. No more doubts. No more questions. Just the truth, raw and undeniable, right in front of me. And now, I had to decide. What the hell was I going to do about it? I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. There she was. My wife. Walking into a hotel with another man. Serena didn't hesitate. She didn't look over her shoulder. She wasn't worried about getting caught. She was comfortable. Too comfortable. She had done this before. And I had let it happen. I felt something inside me splinter. It wasn't just rage. It was humiliation. How long had I been blind? How long had she been laughing behind my back? Damon followed 2 minutes later, his stride confident. Like he knew she'd be waiting for him. Like he owned this part of her life. My vision blurred at the edges. They disappeared into the lobby, and my body moved on its own. I got out of the car. I shouldn't have. I should have driven away, let Grant gather the last bits of evidence, confronted her with cold, calculated precision. But I was past logic. I needed to see. I walked through the hotel doors, keeping my head down, my pulse hammering. The lobby was quiet, warm lighting bouncing off polished floors. I scanned the room, heart pounding in my ears. Then, I saw them. The elevator doors were closing. I caught just a glimpse, her smile, his hand on her waist, the easy way they leaned into each other. My stomach twisted. I didn't think. I sprinted. The elevator doors shut just before I reached them. I slammed my palm against the metal, breathing hard. A ding sounded from another set of doors. Another elevator was coming down. I could chase them, or I could wait. I chose to wait. My hands were shaking. My mouth was dry. I turned and walked to the hotel bar. Sat down. Ordered a whiskey. And then, I waited. The glass was cold against my fingertips. I stared into the amber liquid, my thoughts swirling. Upstairs, my wife was with him. Grant had said he could get me video evidence, that I should let him handle it. But I couldn't sit here, knowing. The ice clinked as I lifted the glass, swallowing hard. They were up there. Right now. I clenched my jaw. The bartender glanced at me, then away. I must have looked like a man on the verge of breaking. Good. Because I was. At exactly 10:47 p.m., I saw them again. Serena stepped off the elevator first, smoothing her dress. Damon followed, his hand brushing the small of her back. A quiet, possessive touch. Rage clawed up my throat. I stood, moving before I even knew what I was doing. She didn't see me until I was a few feet away. And then, her face changed. Shock, guilt, panic. Lucas? Her voice was too high. Forced calm. Damon turned, confused at first. Then, recognition dawned in his eyes. I barely saw him. All I could see was her. I stepped closer, my voice dangerously low. Good meeting, Serena. She blinked fast. Lucas, it's not. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Don't lie to me. Not now. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Damon shifted, exhaling through his nose. Look, man, I think you should. I turned on him. You think I should what? He hesitated, glancing at Serena. My hands curled into fists. You think I don't know? You think I haven't been watching? Serena's face paled. Lucas, you told him I wouldn't do anything, I snapped, cutting her off. That's what you said, right? She flinched. Damon's jaw tensed. I think you need to leave. I laughed again. Leave? Leave? My voice rose, heads turning. The bartender, the front desk clerk, all watching. I took another step forward. Damon stiffened. He was bigger than me, stronger, but I didn't care, because I had something he didn't. I had nothing left to lose. Serena grabbed my arm. Lucas, please, let's go talk. I wrenched away. Talk? Oh, now you want to talk? Her eyes filled with tears. Fake. Too late. Damon shifted, stepping closer. This isn't the place, man. Shut up, I snapped. His jaw flexed. I get it. You're pissed. But don't make a scene. I smiled. Cold. Sharp. You should be worried about the other scenes, I said quietly. The ones I have recorded. The ones my investigator collected. Serena's breath hitched. Damon's face darkened. I leaned in, lowered my voice. Your wife is gonna love what I have, Damon. His entire body tensed. A hit. A solid, perfect hit. He was married. And now, he was the one sweating. I turned to Serena, my voice a razor. You destroyed us, I whispered. And you thought you could get away with it. She shook her head, tears slipping down her face. Lucas, but I was already walking away. I had seen enough, heard enough, and I wasn't done yet. Not even close. By the time I reached my car, my hands had steadied. My mind was clear. I had the evidence, the confrontation, the truth. Now, I needed to decide what came next. Serena had no idea what was waiting for her. Not yet, but she would, because I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. Damon thought I was weak. Serena thought I'd sit back and take this. They were both wrong. Very, very wrong. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove through the city, past places that once meant something. The coffee shop where we used to sit for hours, lost in conversation. The bookstore where she picked out my birthday gifts. The park where we lay on the grass, planning our future. It used to feel like ours. Now, everything felt distant, like a life that belonged to someone else. At some point, I pulled over, staring blankly at the empty road ahead. What was I even holding on to anymore? Her? Us? Or just the idea of who she used to be? The betrayal cut deep, but there was something worse beneath it. This hollow, aching loss of everything I thought was real. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. I had a choice to make. Serena had made hers a long time ago. Now it was my turn. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. I pulled into Grant's office parking lot, feeling a strange kind of calm settle over me. He was already inside, flipping through case files, a fresh cup of coffee steaming next to him. Didn't expect to see you this early, he muttered, setting his cup down. I sat down. It's time. Grant studied me for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. You sure? You have enough proof. You could just leave and start over. I exhaled. She didn't give me that choice. So no, I'm not walking away. Grant nodded slowly. All right. What do you want to do? I slid a small piece of paper across the desk. Claire Pierce, Damon's wife. Grant let out a low whistle. You want her involved? I nodded. She deserves the truth. And if I'm right, she won't go quietly. He rubbed a hand over his jaw. This is going to get ugly. I met his gaze. It already is. 2 days later, Claire received an anonymous package. Inside were carefully selected photos, screenshots of hotel bookings, time-stamped proof of Damon's affair. No note, no explanation, just enough to plant the seed. And then, I waited. It didn't take long. By noon, Damon's office was buzzing. By 1 p.m., he was pulled into a private meeting. By 3 p.m., Claire stormed into his office, her voice loud enough for the entire floor to hear. By 5 p.m., security escorted him out of the building. By 7 p.m., he was out of his house. And Serena? She was next. That night, I walked through the front door, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Serena was curled up on the couch, wine glass in one hand, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when she heard my keys hit the counter. "Hey," she said cautiously. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into my pocket and slid my phone across the counter. "Press play." She hesitated, but tapped the screen. The recording started. "He suspects something." Then Damon's voice. "It doesn't matter. He won't do anything." Her fingers shook. She stopped the audio, swallowing hard. "Lucas, I don't." My voice was flat, emotionless. "No more lies." She inhaled sharply. "It's not what you think." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I'm stupid?" Her eyes welled with tears. "No, You let him think I was weak," I said, barely above a whisper. "You wanted him to believe that." She flinched, like the words physically hit her. "I didn't." "But you did," I interrupted. She reached for my hand. "We can fix this." I pulled back. "We? Serena, there is no we anymore." Her voice cracked. "Are you leaving me?" I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. She stared at it. "Divorce papers," I said. Her lips parted, her entire body going still. "Lucas, please." I closed my eyes for a moment, then looked at her. "You chose this." She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. "I love you." I sighed, finally feeling the weight lift. "You don't even know what love is." Then, I turned and walked out. She didn't chase after me, because for the first time, she knew there was nothing left to save. Damon lost everything. His marriage, his job, his home. Serena? She tried everything. Messages, late-night calls, promises that she could change. But I didn't respond. I moved out, left her with the house, because I didn't want the memories. A week later, I ran into her by accident. I was in line for coffee, waiting, when I saw her sitting outside, alone. She looked different, tired, hollow. She clutched her cup like it was the only thing keeping her hands steady, staring at nothing in particular. For a moment, I felt something, pity, maybe. Then I remembered everything. I turned away, paid for my coffee, and walked out without looking back. The divorce was finalized a month later. I didn't throw a party, didn't celebrate. I just sat alone in my new apartment, a glass of whiskey in my hand, staring at the blank space where all the weight used to be. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. Serena destroyed herself, and I was finally free. The silence felt different now. Before, it had been suffocating. An endless loop of questions, doubts, and the gnawing ache of betrayal. Now, it was just quiet. I sat in my new apartment, looking around at the bare walls, the unopened boxes, the space that was finally mine. There was no trace of Serena here, no ghost of our past, no reminders of what I had lost, or maybe of what I had escaped. For the first time in weeks, I felt still. The final papers came in the mail a few days later. I stared at them for a long time before signing, my pen hovering over the last page. This was it, the end. There was no dramatic moment, no rush of relief or grief, just the simple, quiet realization that I was free. I signed my name, sealed the envelope, and dropped it into the mailbox. And just like that, we were done. A week passed, then 2. And then, one evening, I got a message from a number I hadn't seen in weeks. "Serena, can we talk?" Just once? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep moving forward without looking back. But another part of me, the part that had spent years loving her, needed to hear what she had to say. So I typed back, "Me, one conversation. That's it. We met at the same cafe where we used to spend lazy Sunday mornings, where we once planned trips we never took." She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, stirring a cup of tea. When she looked up and saw me, something flickered in her expression. Something sad, something tired. I sat down across from her, folding my hands together on the table. "Say what you need to say." She exhaled, looking down at her cup. "I don't know where to start." "Try the truth." She winced but nodded. "I was selfish. I was reckless. And I lost the best thing I ever had because of it." I didn't respond. She looked up, her eyes glistening. "I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I regret it. All of it." I leaned back, studying her. "Do you regret what you did? Or do you regret getting caught?" She swallowed hard. "Both." At least she was honest. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "I spent so long thinking I did something wrong. That maybe I pushed you away, or that I wasn't enough." Her breath hitched. "Lucas, no. But that was the lie, wasn't it?" I cut in. "The real truth is that it had nothing to do with me. You made a choice." She nodded slowly. "I did. And I made mine." Her eyes filled with something. Understanding, maybe. "I miss you," she whispered. For a brief moment, I let myself remember us before all of this. The laughter, the inside jokes, the late nights wrapped up in each other. But then I thought about what came after. The lies, the manipulation, the way she had made me question my own reality. "You don't miss me," I said softly. "You miss what I gave you. And you miss who you were when you were with me." She looked down, nodding slightly, as if she had already known that would be my answer. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened resting between us. Then, finally, she whispered, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I thought about it. Would I? Maybe. One day. But not today. And not for her. For me. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know I'm done holding on to it." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "I hope you find someone who deserves you." I let out a quiet breath. "I will." And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed it. The conversation stayed with me for a few days. Not in a way that hurt, but in a way that reminded me how far I had come. There was a time when I would have done anything to fix what was broken, when I would have taken any amount of pain just to keep her. Now, I could finally see it clearly. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some endings are necessary. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. I was just done. A month after the divorce, I went on my first real date. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but when Naomi set it up, I didn't say no. "You've been living in the past long enough," she told me. "It's time." And maybe she was right. So I showed up. No expectations. No pressure. Just a conversation over dinner with someone new. And when she laughed at one of my terrible jokes, something inside me cracked open. A small, cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, there was something good waiting for me after all of this. Months passed. The scars remained, but they no longer bled. Serena became a memory, nothing more. I heard through mutual friends that she had moved to another city. Started over. I wished her well, from a distance, because I had no desire to see her again. One evening, I stood on my balcony, looking out at the skyline, a glass of whiskey in my hand. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something. Not waiting for an apology. Not waiting for closure. Not waiting for her. The past no longer held me. And for the first time, I was excited about the future. It was mine again, and I was ready.